Garrett Blevins here. I'm going to talk to you today about powerlifting programming. I did a series, I think a couple years back on powerlifting programming under a linear periodization model. Those are some good videos with some good information in them, but this is going to be a little bit different. This series is based around some of what I've learned about programming over the last couple of years, as well as presenting a philosophy or methodology of training that I think is very conducive to progressing quickly in strength training, getting both stronger and bigger as fast as possible. There's a number of ways to do that. A lot of it comes down to personality, but one of the most popular programs, and many of the programs for beginners that are out there, function with the terms of novice, intermediate, and advanced. So, what do those mean? Novice, intermediate, and advanced. Well, the way I'm going to use those terms is a little bit different than you may have heard them in other programs. For example, in starting strength, a novice is somebody who can progress pretty much every workout or every other workout. And they can go through what's called linear progression, which is not linear periodization. Linear periodization is something where you take a whole microcycle and you lower rep ranges throughout and you increase intensity throughout. That's linear periodization. All good programs have some form of linear periodization in them, though it may undulate a little bit more as you get more advanced. But linear progression is very simple. It's just where you add weight to the lifts that you did in the last workout, every workout. And so if you did a 5x5 with 225 on squats, linear progression to your next workout would be a 5x5 with 230. I think that using linear progression for a novice is extremely appropriate. The reason why is because when you start strength training, your gains come not so much in building muscle, but from neurological adaptation. Neurological adaptation simply means that your muscles are firing and working together in a more cohesive way so that you're able to lift weight better with the body you already have. Therefore, a novice program is primarily geared at maxing out, or at least getting your neurological adaptation through its beginning gains. And there are beginner gains to neurological adaptation where you just get better just because. It's very fast, it's a nice time, it's when strength training is the most fun. So you know, novice doesn't mean weak. You can use novice style training programs for as long as you can, and you should. If I could add weight each week to my lifts and just start setting PRs every week, I would do that. You don't want to progress onto an intermediate or an advanced program if you don't have to. So, a novice, for the purposes of the free programs that I'm going to be putting out with these videos, is going to be somebody who can get stronger and test on a, these are all going to be on 3-week blocks, at least for the first couple that I talked about. They're going to be able to test and remax 4 to 2 times in a 3-week period. That's what's going to be a novice. And the 4 times over 3 weeks, which comes out to once every 3 workouts, that's going to be an early novice, and 2 times is going to be a late novice. Now these are going to be programs that I put out in template form for you. I'll discuss the exact way to implement those workouts a little bit later in the video. But there are a few things that you really want to focus on as a novice. One, you want to get on a training program where you're tracking what you're doing, so you actually know what you're doing in the gym and you are seeing your progression because you're adding weight every, in this case, every 3rd workout or every 6th workout. Now you'll notice that's a little bit different from trying to go into the gym and use the same repetitions or the same style workout every time or every other time. I just think that you run out of that neurological gain so quickly, it would make the novice program only a couple of weeks long. This way, you're staying in a novice phase maybe for a couple of months, and maybe longer, maybe shorter. It just depends on where you're at in your own training, if you've had training or experience in sports before, or if you're an entirely untrained person who has spent their whole life, at a desk. It's going to change the way that you respond to training. In any case, the primary purpose of this phase is to, 1, start start using a program, which is to say that you are tracking your progress, which is extremely important. And the second is to work on your form. It is extremely important for those two things to be happening when you start trying to gain strength and size. Form is incredibly important as what your programming is. To a lesser degree, and I'm going to put this a little bit more in the intermediate phase, I'm going to talk about these as priorities. Your third priority is going to be nutrition. Nutrition is also very important for sport performance. But again, if you're starting to make a change in your life, if you're just coming into this program, it means you're probably fairly new to lifting, or at least new to training. And training is different than lifting. Anybody can go to the gym and lift, but you have to have a plan to train. And so nutrition is just another thing that you're going to be doing in your life that's different from what you're doing already. You don't want to overload yourself. That's going to set you up for failure. Change a few things at a time. The first thing and the easiest thing that you can do by far is download this free program and start running it and tracking your numbers. It's as simple as getting the Excel sheet onto your smartphone, taking that phone in, you're probably already listening to music on it, and writing in the numbers so that you are tracking what you're doing in your training. This program tracks volume, but it also, the most important thing for linear progression is you know what weights you did in your last workout or your last workout of that type, and you know what to do the next workout. It's that simple. A little bit more difficult is work on your form, because it's not something, even if you film your lifts, that you're going to really be able to do for yourself, because you don't probably know what proper form looks like. Now, neurological adaptation is going to happen during this period, and you're going to increase your ability to lift heavier weights. But the heavier the weight gets, the more increased your probabilities are for injury. Now, let me be clear. You still have a very low possibility of injury when you're first starting out with lifting, because you're not using very heavy weights, even if you're increasing at a fast rate. If you're squatting with 95 pounds on day one, and then by the next 2 or 3 weeks you've gone from 95 pounds to 135, percentage-wise, that's a very large increase on your squat. But as far as absolute weight, you haven't increased your weight that much, and you're probably not going to get horribly injured. You're not going to blow out your knee, for example, with 135. You might strain a part of your back or something if you're doing really bad lifting, but in general, you're going to be pretty safe. I don't want to discourage you from starting a program. But it is important to, as you are gaining strength, work on your form. One, because that's going to have your muscles working properly, and you're going to be training the muscles in the right way. It's very important not to just go through the motions, but to go through the motions properly. So, form is very important. For that, first off and foremost, the easiest thing that you can do is look at other lifters who are lifting well. Go to YouTube, type in powerlifting world records, and look at how the people who lifted the most weight lifted the most weight. It's free, it's something you can do to study and learn on your own. If you want to have somebody coach you on your form, I'm more than happy to do that, and as part of these programs there will be a subscription to a form that you can sign up for. But you don't have to sign up, it's your call. It's about what you want to do. And again, the point of this is not to get your money. The point of this is to help you succeed in gaining strength and size. And there are ways to do that for free. It's just harder. In my life, I didn't have a coach that taught me how to use proper form for the power lifts for the first 2 or 3 years that I was lifting. If I had, I may be further along than I am right now, but I wasn't ready to make that commitment. Instead, I did what I just explained to you. I went to YouTube, I found the best lifters, and I started learning from all of the free information that's out there. It is out there. A lot of it's on my channel. You can go to Super Training. You can look at Chris Duffin's work. You can look at Kelly Starrett and Mobility WOD for mobility drills or pain management. There's all sorts of free resources out there if you want to go find it. But if you want me to help you with that, I'm more than happy to. There'll be information down below with a link to the website where there's more information on how you can do that as a novice. Regardless, form is very important. Figure out a way to work on your form as you're lifting from the very start. Don't do things wrong. If you do have a minor injury, it's only going to discourage you from continuing to gain strength and size. Now, for an intermediate program, the time in between testing is going to get longer and longer. It's because you're going to have to build more before you test your strength. Really what you're testing in the novice phase is, again, that neurological adaptation. Now, there's still neurological adaptation going on even as you move through that into the intermediate phase. But you get a diminishing returns. Here's what I mean by that. If this is your progress from 0% neurologically adapted, which would be impossible because we all walk around and stand on 2 feet. So obviously, if you're learning to squat, you can do a body weight squat. You have some proficiency. But if you had 0% there, just for the sake of argument, and if you had 100% here, which probably no one ever achieves, and here you have time for however long you've been training, this is kind of what the curve would look like. You would, at the very beginning, have a steep increase in your neurological adaptation. But at some point, that starts to level out and get very flat as you approach 100%. 100% being that your muscles are so primed and prepared to lift heavy 1-rep maxes that they couldn't be more primed and prepared to fire in unison and to be used to produce maximal force. That would be 100%. And as you get closer to that, as you move through your training, you're going to have diminishing returns. You're going to be putting in all this effort and getting a much smaller result. That's why so few people make it to the elite levels in totals in powerlifting. One is the genetic side of things, but the other is that it takes a long time because you're going to have to start scraping and trying harder and harder for those gains. Your microcycles are going to get longer and longer. This microcycle, I suppose I should actually call it, even though it's short, the 3 weeks is the macro cycle, and the A, B, C, A, B, C order of workouts, if this is week 1 and this is week 2, you would be doing a ABC where you test on day C, and then you do ABC, again, another test on day C where you're going through a linear progression. This is an extremely short 3 workout microcycle. That's very quick. But as you progress in your training, you're not going to be able to run it that way anymore. So let me talk a little bit. I'll erase some of this so we can talk about intermediate training. So on the novice program, so you know, and again, you don't have to write all this down, just download it. It's already in there, but so you know what it is. The early novice program is for week 1, day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 4. So on a 4-day per week training cycle. That can be adjusted. Again, if you want help adjusting that or if you want coaching, there's information in the links below. But you can adjust the template however you need to. If you need the workouts to go into 3 days, then you would just adjust and change the way you do your microcycles a little bit. If you wanted to work out 5 days a week, you would just split up these days a little bit. So you could have 5 of them. So you can do that on your own. You don't need to pay for someone to do that. It should be pretty easy for you to do. But anyways, week 1, day 1, you're going to do workout A. Day 2, workout B. Day 3, workout C. Then you're going to repeat that until you stall for 2 tests in a row. So, if when you, on your first week through, you're going to be your first time going through the program, you're going to use weights that fit into kind of an RPE recommendation. Long story short, make sure you're not going to RPE 10 on your first 3 days through. Go to where you have 2 or 3 reps left in the tank when you're doing your exercises. So, for all of the exercises on these, you know, leave 2 to 3 reps in the tank. You don't need to be going all out on these. you haven't trained really yet. You need to take it easy on yourself. But this is going to be your first test day. Then you're going to repeat those 3 workouts again, except you're going to increase the weights by 5 pounds. Until when you get to day C, you're setting a new rep max with 5 pounds more than you were doing before. And you're going to repeat that process. So here it would be plus 10 from what you used in your original week, plus 5 from your previous week. So here you're doing 10 pounds more in your 3rd cycle through than you were in your 1st cycle. Just 5 pounds more than the 2nd run through. And that's all the program does. You'll run the program until on 2 of your test days in a row, you stall. If you stall, then you know that you've probably gotten as neurologically adapted as you're going to be able to get in that training cycle with this short of a microcycle. A microcycle of 3 days. This is a 3-day microcycle, so it's not even a whole week. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to move on to the late novice program, which is a 6-day microcycle. So it's going to go in A, B, C, D, E, F. A, B, C, D, E, F. And you're not going to test every 3 days. You're going to test every 6 workouts, which is once every 1.5 weeks. So you're going to have 2 tests in a 3-week block. And you'll run that until, for an entire 3-week period, or again, 2 test days, you stall. So if you stalled out on both of those days and were unable to set rep PRs, because all of this will be reps, it will not be singles, then you'll move on to an intermediate program. The intermediate program, I'm not going to write it all out up here. It's actually still in production at the time of making this video. But the intermediate program is going to have 2 components to it. But, as you probably guessed, it's going to just be a longer microcycle. So, and sorry, I should have been more specific. It's not every 6 days, it's every 6 workouts. Or 3 workouts. This is the early novice, this is the late novice. But we're also going to have an early intermediate and probably an intermediate and maybe even a late intermediate. I haven't decided on these yet, those are the ones still in production. But the early intermediate will probably be 1 test every 3 weeks. And so it will be kind of, as you've seen, instead of 4 tests, 2 tests, now we're at 1 test. And from that point on, training is going to start to get a little bit further out. The reason why you can kind of do this sort of close testing in these early phases is, again, it's that neurological adaptation. You don't need to build more muscle. You don't need to increase your muscle mass or your muscle size during this time. And really, it's going to be hard for you to do that because you can't lift that much weight. You can't accumulate that much volume. Your recovery is going to be very low. As you go through these programs, you're going to be learning how to do the exercises. You're going to be neurologically adapting. But you're also going to be learning how to train and how to recover from your training. You're going to be increasing the amount of fatigue that you can deal with. And that's going to allow you to start digging a little bit more fatigue into your system through volume so that you're going to be able to tax your body and force it to adapt. The way your body adapts is by getting bigger and stronger. That's what you're making your body do as you give it this stimulus. The stimulus produces a response. The response accomplishes an adaptation. But again, I had it written up here before, that adaptation is going to happen best if your nutrition is on point. And it's very important that you're getting enough protein. Enough protein is probably, 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight. That would probably be appropriate. And then you need to fill out the rest of your calories per day with your fats and your carbs. You should be getting healthy fats. I strongly encourage people at this point, if they're in and they've moved through the novice phase and are now in this early intermediate phase, to start focusing on nutrition. It definitely needs to be at least minimally good. You need to be eating clean, probably at least 2/3 of the time, maybe more than that, to really have good performance. Because at this point, your microcycle may very well be 9 weeks long. I haven't fully decided on that. Somewhere in here it's going to start to get to 9 or 12 weeks in between testing periods. If that's the case, that means that you now have the opportunity in some of your early training, probably the first 6 weeks before reps really start dropping down, to actually start looking like you lift, to start building a physique. There is no reason that powerlifters or people who are pursuing powerlifting shouldn't be training like bodybuilders for the beginning of their career. Not that you're training like a bodybuilder in the sense that you're trying to have everything symmetrical. You're not training to compete in a bodybuilding show, but you're training like a bodybuilder in the sense that you are building muscle, that you're actually gaining weight. Now, I want to encourage you, don't gain in a sloppy gain where you just eat a bunch of fried food, donuts, a bunch of stuff where you're just putting fat on your midsection. Feed your body, fuel it with good fuel, so that you can actually build a body that's capable of lifting heavier weights. You're probably watching this video because you want to be bigger and stronger. That's a long journey. There's not going to be any shortcuts. But don't cut your own progress out by not focusing on things like nutrition. And again, by the time you reach this point, you're already used to training. You're already working on form. So it's just one more additional piece now to start working on your nutrition. Instead of trying to change everything all at once right at the beginning, getting discouraged and quitting. Whatever you choose with nutrition, don't think of it like a diet that you're going to be doing for a short period of time. Think about it as a life change. You're changing your actual food diet. It's not a special 3-week lose 10 pounds or 10-week gain 30 pounds of muscle diet where you're eating an insane, weird sort of food. This is going to be something that needs to be sustainable for you. This is the rest of your life, or the next 5 years of your life. Think to yourself when you're picking out your nutrition and your dieting plans, can I do this for the next 5 years? Is this a sustainable practice? If the answer to that is no, then that's not the right choice for you. If you're new to this, Google if it fits your macros. IIFYM. It doesn't mean that you should eat whatever you want, like, oh, all these Snickers bars fit my macros, so I'm just going to eat Snickers bars and multivitamins. That's dumb. You need to eat quality food. Stan Efferding, bodybuilder, the strongest bodybuilder probably ever, who's also set numerous world records in powerlifting, talks about how important food choices are and how important fueling your body with the right types of foods is if you're going to perform like an athlete. For people in the intermediate phase, like we talked about with diminishing returns, they have diminishing neurological adaptation returns. But they're just really starting to have the opportunity for some good hypertrophy, to build some muscle. And so, why not do everything you can? There are plenty of free macro calculators out there. If you look up Lane Norton's PH3, he has a macro calculator on bodybuilding.com that's associated with his PH3 program that is actually pretty good. It's a good starting point, but you still need to make good decisions on where you're getting your macros from. Now, that said, all of these programs, early novice, late novice, and soon to be the early intermediate programs, are going to be free programs that I put out. Beyond that point, there'll be opportunities to work with Blessed Coaching if you want to progress on to later programs. The reason why that starts to move into the coaching side of things is because you're going to start needing help. You've probably done everything you can that you can find for free. And you may want somebody else who's done some of the research to help you. This is when it becomes really important to make sure that you're using proper form. Because at this point, you're starting to lift heavy weights and you're starting to increase your volume. When you do that, if you're using bad form, especially let's take a deadlift for example, if you have rounding in your back or you're not activating muscles properly, you have hip shift either in the deadlift or the squat, then it's important to have somebody who knows how to fix that or knows how to help you help yourself fix that. That's where coaching comes in. So there will be programs out of these that will continue, but it's going to be something that's going to work more along a guided coaching line, just so you know in case you're interested. A lot of the programs, I was always confused, like why don't people put out novice programs, intermediate programs, and then free advanced programs? Well, the reason why is because when you start moving into this level of training, you need to start tailoring programs specifically to people, and a lot of their genetic predispositions start becoming far more important at that point. How much volume they can recover from, what type of muscle fiber they have. And so that's where it's good to have a tailored program specific to you. Up until that point, free templates are great. But if you're going to pick a free template to use, why not pick a free template that has ongoing programs from it? Starting Strength is about the only program I know that really goes well through the novice, intermediate programs. There are other people who have put them out. But the end of the Texas method is to move into Westside Barbell method. And while Westside Barbell has produced some great geared lifters, it hasn't done real well for raw lifters. And that's really what these programs are geared towards. They're built around the power lifts, but they're also built around helping you build a body that is going to have a higher strength ceiling so that you can get bigger and stronger, so that you'll actually look like you lift. In any case, I hope that helps you understand what these programs are and a little bit on how to implement them. Again, the information will be in the link below where you can download the programs. And if you're interested in coaching, check out blessedcoaching.com. I hope wherever you're at, you're doing well. Blessings.